Hello, this is Pastor Terry Goodman, and I want to welcome you to the Wesleyan Connection. This podcast is primarily for the clergy and laity of the Holston Annual Conference. Join with me now as I take a look around the Connection and share some of the things happening in the churches of our annual conference. Hello, this is Pastor Terry Goodman, and I want to welcome you to the Wesleyan Connection podcast this morning. You're going back a little bit in time here. I did several interviews at annual conference this past June that I have not yet published, and so I'm going to probably over the next few weeks begin publishing those. Today I'm going to share with you an interview with Fred and Libby Deering. I'm sure we are quite familiar with that name, but also a lady that was with them by the name of Heather Hayes, and all of them are missionaries, and this particular podcast we talk about the missionary life, and in particular we talk about South Sudan and some of the events that have been transpiring there. Again, this was recorded in June, and so many of the events that they refer to are events from February, March, April. In the interview, Fred indicates that they'd be going back there in August. So they're already back in, I guess it'd be northern Uganda, since they had to leave South Sudan. So there's a good chance they're there already. It's just that this interview has been time shifted, and I just wanted to make sure that you understood the framework of the time and the when the interview was taken versus when you're listening to it. This is a few months old, but the message is great. You need to hear what Fred and Libby and Heather have to say about being missionaries and about what they feel called to do and how they represent Holston Conference on the mission field. So I hope you enjoy this interview. Well, I'm here today with three folks that are related to the ministries we have in South Sudan. I'm going to get them to share their names with you, and then we'll just sort of talk and see what has been happening there.
My name is Heather Hayes, and I'm a volunteer missionary.
Fred Deering. I'm a retired elder, volunteer, and district superintendent of South Sudan.
I'm Libby Deering, and I am a volunteer missionary.
Okay, I am not, the missionary kind of folk. I've served all my years in the local church. Give me an idea, and those that are listening, what's it like to be a missionary? Who wants to go first?
Being a missionary is being a Christian, whether it's here in the local church or across the sea on foreign soil. It's one and the same. I think it's a difference in location. Our jobs are the same: making disciples, spreading the good news of Jesus Christ, embodying the love of God, the grace of God. Those actions are done, and being empowered by the Holy Spirit, that is done everywhere by everybody. So it's really just a difference of where you're standing. It's just same function, just different location.
Well, for me, I've always been reluctant to call myself a missionary because I've always thought missionaries were people that had all the answers, and heaven knows I have none of the answers. I have more questions than anything. But rather than call myself a missionary, I just think of myself as a children's worker. I just work with the children, and that's it.
The word I would use would be exhilarating. It's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life. I've been a teacher. I've been a children's director in a church, and we went to South Sudan, and I met the Children of Grace home, and I knew that's where my heart and where God was calling me.
So obviously we've heard the news, and South Sudan is not a place where we can actively do missions anymore. So what are we doing to sort of fill in the gap, so to speak?
Well, most of the people we worked with were evacuated, and well, they weren't evacuated. Libby and them were evacuated. The people we worked with there have left due to the violence, due to starvation. It's that violence that has and starvation that has forced them to leave. And the people we work with in and around Ye, where we lived, are now starting to leave because of the violence, because of the hunger. They're coming across the border at the rate of about 2,000, 2,800 per day. Most of those, 85%, are women and children. And on any given day, you will see 100 children unaccompanied coming across the border. So what we're doing and what Heather and Libby and the others are doing, the children at the home where we that was formed by Holston Conference, those children were able to come into Uganda at the refugee camp. The pastors, a lot of the church members, a lot of the residences there have come over, and we go over and work with them. This week they'll be starting a licensing school for the pastors. The pastors who have come across have already started 5 brand new churches. The children now have some more permanent structures instead of the tents that they were living in the camp. But we're able to feed them, educate them, provide medical care. So it's we're with them physically several times a year. Various people like Heather, Libby, and I'll go back in August, again in January, and then others will go in the gap. Some will go do teacher training. So it's just being with them, giving them hope, letting them know they're not going to be abandoned, they're not forgotten, and the day when peace comes, we'll be walking hand in hand with them back across the border, back home. So it's just being hope.
And we're also continuing to scholarship some of the promising students. We have several secondary students that we scholarship, and we have some post-secondary. We have we have 2 medical officers, 2 in medical officers training. We have 1 in business training, 1 in education. Actually, Joyce is also business, so we have 2 in business.
Medical.
And so, we feel like that's the future of South Sudan. And getting the education along with the spiritual part that goes along with that, so that they have the heart of Christ going back into South Sudan and can take peace with them.
I didn't really come prepared with a whole lot of questions for this interview. I'm just running folks down as I see them outside. What else would you like to say? What could you tell us that we need to think about? What is it specifically we could be praying for?
Praying that hearts will truly be transformed and that people will truly desire peace. And it's a human problem. One of our members has always said, when humanity is at its worst, God is at God's greatest. And I think that's what's happening now, and it's just being faithful. We don't understand why all this is happening. We understand human greed, we understand corruption, we understand lust of power. And if you read the Bible, you see it there, you see it now. And so it's just trusting God, being faithful, standing with those people, and through thick and thin, and not abandoning them. And so it's just praying for peace and praying that God's will and God's grace will transform hearts, and that they can truly embody the love of God, the grace, and the community of humanity. We're a family, a human family. And we're not supposed to be living like this. So that's our prayer.
Anybody else?
Pray for our children there. There are so many children, not just our own orphans that we take care of, but there are thousands upon thousands of children that have no one, that are making it on their own, and they need to be remembered.
Well, and our children as well. they had just made a new home at Grace Home. We have 2 orphanages, and they had just gotten settled into their homes and were really thriving and doing well, and they had to leave everything and light out, go to a new place. The hopeful thing is that they know that God has not abandoned them. They are together with their family, because all of the Grace Home people are together. But they do still need our prayers.
Okay, this has been sort of a serious kind of interview, and I almost hate to make the segue that I'm about to make, but I'm got to end on a light note, okay? But it's probably one of the most deeply theological questions that you have ever been asked in your life, and I need you all to give me a response to this. It doesn't have to be detailed, but what would you consider your favorite dessert to be?
Chocolate pie.
Chocolate pie.
Eating mangoes that have fallen from the tree with the children. Fresh mangoes.
Oh, yeah.
Tiramisu.
Well, I want to thank you 3 for your sharing with us today, and I hope that everyone listening will indeed be praying for this ministry and for the lives that have been touched by it and the lives that will be touched. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Terry.
This is Pastor Goodman. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Wesleyan Connection. Be sure to check back often for more podcasts.